when your work is appreciated by not just your peers, but by a global body. And over the weekend, Ghana had reason to be happy when one of our own, Nako Kobla, won an award in South Africa, the CNN African Journalist Awards ceremony. And I'm glad to say that she's joining us now via Skype for a quick conversation. Nako, good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Francis.
Okay, great.
It's a pleasure.
Now, where exactly are you?
You mean my location right now?
Exactly.
I have hijacked somebody's office.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's fine. But many are happy for what you've done and what you've won. But what's been the experience for you, the work you did, and the recognition that you've gotten today?
Well, it started out as a normal story that every journalist would do, just out of curiosity, passion, and then following up on the headlines. At that time, the award filing and nomination was not in mind at all, but it feels good that the hard work has paid off. It wasn't in vain, and it's been recognized.
Okay. Now, a lot of the time, many who watch television get to see the story, but we don't get to know what happens in producing that story. First, tell us what story won you this award and what you had to do to get it.
Well, the main story that won the award was on the Ebola orphans in Sierra Leone, but it was one of a series of stories we had done on the recovery process in Sierra Leone and Liberia after Ebola. And we had to travel there. Ebola was not in Ghana. We had to travel there with my cameraman, Philip Katriku. And it was more like in two parts. We were there to follow up on the headlines we had seen on all the international networks, and also how the Ghanaian health workers were faring in the country. So we went with two other doctors, Dr. Fred Adomako and Dr. Lawrence Boidu. But for us, we are journalists. We can't just let the headlines be just as they are. We had to follow up and get more details on that. Yes, and so we spent almost 2 weeks in the two countries. I think 4 days in each country. You're getting all the headlines, meeting all the authorities in charge at that time, from WHO, UNMIR, to the crisis management teams in all the two countries, and even the Ministry of Health, and then meeting ordinary people. We also went to the treatment centers, visited survivors. We were everywhere. We had to get all the angles, and even went to communities that were under quarantine. At that time, we thought that Ebola wasn't entirely over, but to see like a whole community, an outstretched like coastal area under quarantine was something very intriguing, just because maybe 1 or 2 people had contracted the disease in that community, and so the whole community had to be put down. They are monitored, they don't go anywhere, they had to be fed day and night until I think about 21 days or so.
Okay, what's that one memory in doing the story that has stayed with you since and you still recall vividly today, that very difficult or harrowing experience in covering that story?
It's the plight of the Ebola survivors, because it's one thing contracting the disease when you don't even know if you're going to survive or not. But after that, when they come out, they're ostracized, and people are afraid to touch them, to go near them, because the fear is I would contract Ebola, even though that is not the case. For me, that is too much for somebody who has gone through that crisis. That was too much, and that's what attracted me to Selena's story. She had lost all her family, and her external family would not take her in because they were afraid they would contract Ebola. So she was in an orphanage, and the last time I checked on her, she's out of the orphanage and staying with one of the health workers who actually treated her.
Okay. Now, congratulations once again for the award.
Thank you.
Tell me something. Where do you go from here? What does this award do to your career as a journalist?
Well, it brings a lot of responsibility. It takes your career to a different level, and it sets some standards for you that you're not supposed to lower. Because let me tell you, when I met the other journalists who were nominated, their stories were just superb. They were compelling stories. We were calling each other killer stories, you know. They had covered the headlines that had happened throughout the year, from Al Shabaab to the Chibok girls, name it, all the stories. And that is what the judges were looking out for. We are Africans. Things happen in Africa. They don't want to see it on the other international networks. They want Africans reporting about it. They want us to go the extra mile, leave our comfort zone. It may be far away, but it certainly would affect you in a way or two. If Al Shabaab should strike in Kenya like they did, Ghana was affected. We lost a diplomat, right?
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be like we should leave our boundaries, you know, go beyond borders, like CNN would say, and do more. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm sure many are talking about you. You must be happy, family happy as well. You're here in Ghana for a couple of days, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Enjoying the moment?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm enjoying the moment. Yes. It's good to be back home, Francis. You know, you get some kinky, watchy to eat. You don't get to eat that when you're away.
Yeah,
you know?
that should be good for you. But I'm sure there are many young journalists who are looking to and saying, next year by this time, I want to stand exactly where Nako was in Johannesburg or in South Africa to claim such an award. What do you tell them to inspire them to do some more work?
To work hard, to be passionate about what they do. Their passion has to be there, because if the passion is not there, it becomes a routine and you might give up along the line. I remember when we had a session with the journalists, they were calling some stories routine stories. Not because they are not good stories, they are happening all the time, but you have to find a way of retelling the story that will attract attention. Something like FGM, it's child marriage. It's with us, but we have to find a way to tell the story, to get attention, to get authorities to act on it. But if it's the same story every time, anytime somebody hears, be like, okay, the same thing again, okay. But we have to find a new way and also use other tools, new media tools to tell the story. That's what I can tell them. And for women in journalism, it was quite interesting. We had this forum where the comments coming from where men were very interesting. You know, I don't know if that is the perception everywhere, but from the forum, what we realized was that men expect women to work more hard, especially women in journalism, which is not kind of fair. But if that's the case, then I'll say, especially the female journalists should work harder, should really work harder, because
I'm sure
men are not happy.
A very interesting gender conversation. But thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon, Veronica, and congratulations once again. I'm sure that for many who are in the media fraternity, they are happy for what you've done. We'll talk some more later. She's editor for Africa News, and she's won the CNN African Journalist Award, which was held over the weekend. Congratulations to her. And talking about those in media and the work that they do, you'll recall that the Ebola story was one that was told quite big across all media platforms. Even here in Ghana, we had cause to, here on Joy News, cover a number of stories about our preparedness to deal with it. Yes, of course, the stories were told, but the way she did it is what has got her that award, and it's an inspiration to many in the media fraternity. Talk about people to celebrate. There's also something happening in Cornell University in the United States of America. I'm talking about my own colleague, Joseph Opoku Gakpo. Forgive me, two Josephs, they can easily confuse you. Joseph Opoku Gakpo is at the Cornell University in the United States of America, delivering quite interesting lectures on climate change and biotechnology. And we'll bring you an interview with him. He's been busy, but he's also, with the power of journalism and his work in agriculture, is inspiring many, educating many across the globe to understand what happens in our part of the world and in how we're covering issues relating to climate change and biotechnology. In fact, if I'm right, Joseph is joining us now from the United States. Joseph, Benawa, good afternoon to you.
Francis, good afternoon to you, and very good to see you again.
Right. I must say that ordinarily, if we're to have a conversation, it will be about you covering a story, and then we'll say, what's happening? Give us the update. But now you are telling a story, telling people in America a story on climate change and biotechnology. What is it about? Why should we be interested in it?
Well, essentially, the discussions have centered mainly around concerns about, it being increasingly difficult to produce food in different parts of the world, including Africa over the years as a result of poor weather patterns and issues about, us being very much dependent on rain-fed agriculture and the need for increased innovations to help deal with some of these challenges that come with our food production, procedures. And so we've been mainly having discussions on that, and I've been explaining to those who have gathered here at one of the halls here at the Cornell University some of these challenges with our food production patterns. And we've also been having discussions generally on the kind of technological innovations that are present in Ghana currently when it comes to food production and how some of these are helping deal with the concerns about poor rainfall patterns. And we've also been discussing generally the possibility of introducing various forms of technology, including biotechnology, when it comes to the production of some of these foods. So essentially, those are some of the specific points that I've been sharing with the audience here at the Cornell University, Francis.
And what has been the reaction? And I'm sure for forums like this, they would not only listen, but contribute and say a number of things that we can also do to help out with these things. What has been the response and reactions to your presentation today?
Francis, here we've had people coming from varied backgrounds participating in this particular session. And so we have people from Latin America, countries like Guatemala, countries like Mexico. We have folks coming from the Asian countries like China. We've had folks coming from other parts of Africa like Nigeria. They've also been sharing varied experiences about the agricultural success in their country. And clearly, the indications are that the challenges that we appear to face appear to run very much through issues about the poor rainfall patterns and us being heavily dependent on rain-fed agriculture. And so when some of these challenges with poor weather patterns come up, then it ends up affecting our ways. But, here in the United States, for example, they've really gone far when it comes to introducing innovation to the agricultural production. And so they've been making the point that they think that the time is ripe for all the civil society groups and other organizations, and particularly government, to do more to help farmers in the other parts of the world to also produce with the necessary technology. Because here in the United States, for example, those that we've been having the discussions with have been making the point that they have very less, only about 1 to 2% of their population involved in agricultural production. Okay. Unlike Ghana, for example, where we have more than 60% of the population involved, but thanks to agricultural innovation, they are able to feed their people, and to the extent that they're able to import some of the food to our parts of the world. So they have mainly been encouraging our governments to do a lot more to introduce some of these technological innovations when it comes to modernization of agriculture, when it comes to agricultural biotechnology, so that then it can help feed ourselves and help us produce a lot more that we can export to different parts of the world. Francis?
You're brief, and certainly the issues begin to come out to you naturally. But how has it been for you, the experience of not reporting a story, but delivering information in an area that you're vexed with to an audience at the Cornell University?
Well, Francis, it's been interesting. In fact, a lot of the things that we've been sharing here are things that we have gotten hold of doing stories on the field in Ghana. So we've, for example, been discussing the challenges that farmers face in Ghana. And a lot of what I've been sharing, for example, comes from some of the documentaries that we've done in rural communities. You would recall, for example, sometime late last year, we did a documentary we titled Lost Harvest, which focused on the challenges that farmers are facing with the poor rainfall patterns. And so essentially, a lot of what we've been sharing with them, looking at the fact that myself, for example, I'm a journalist and, not so much of an expert. And so a lot of the stories that I've been retelling are things that we've gathered from the stories that we've actually told. So the documentaries that we've done about the challenges that cocoa farmers face, for example, is something that has really come up. A lot of the things that we gathered in producing that documentaries are things that we've actually been sharing there. So it's become more like extending and delivering the content of the work that we do, and the documentaries that we produce as a multimedia group, all the way to a more global panel beyond the confines of Ghana, for example. And for me, it's been a very good experience. It's actually been enlightening. I think that we are all really glad that at least the documentaries that we produce, the stories that we tell in Ghana are not just sticking with the Ghanaian audience, but we've been able to get it out here. And here in the United States, for example, particularly at the Cornell University, we've had a lot of folks, for example, who are getting access to some of those specifics on the challenges that Ghanaian farmers are facing for the benefit of them, and also probably for the benefit of us, because then in the end, the kind of innovation that they have here may end up helping us deal with some of those challenges back there in Ghana.
Okay. Joseph, going beyond borders and transforming from just reporting to sharing the story with many across the globe. Joseph, I see a glow in your face and in your delivery today. What's been your unique American story, your American experience?
Well, the glow that I see, I'm sure, is no different from what you've been seeing over the years. But it's really been a good experience. I'm someone, for example, who is very much passionate about seeing innovations when it comes to agricultural production. And so being here in the United States, getting the opportunity to visit farms, dairy farms, where they do the production of milk and the production of cattle, for example, and some of the things that you see are things that you would never see on any dairy farm, for example, in Ghana. For example, the mechanized technology that sees them produce, millions of gallons of milk on very small farms from very limited cattle, which are, so very much productive. And even on their farms themselves, the kind of mechanized nature. And you don't see so much of human intervention. You see a lot of tools and equipment being controlled by computers, really operating on the farms. These are things that I must say really, really fascinate me. And then it gives me the thinking that it's really about time that we also, in Ghana in particular, begin thinking of getting some of those innovative technologies back in our country. Because the reality is that the environments are becoming more difficult in order to get food produced. And so until we see some of those innovations, then it threatens our whole food security. And once I get back, I look forward to impacting some of that understanding with advanced technology when it comes to agricultural production in the kind of reportage that we do and highlighting all of those, so that then one way or the other, we can start conversations around very good policy initiatives that may, in the end, help, inure to the nation's food security and also benefit our farmers generally. And so those have been some of the experiences, and I'm really looking forward to applying a lot of those things that I'm learning here to the kind of work that we'll be doing back in Ghana for the benefit of not only our farmers, but the ordinary members of the public, because we all consume food, and without food, there is no life.
Okay, talk of food, Joseph, and be very honest with us. Quick answer, be brief, don't dally around. What food have you missed in this period that you've been in America?
I've missed banku and tomato stew.
Okay, that's a very honest answer. Well, thank you, Joseph, and congratulations for the work you're doing. I'm sure we'll talk some more later. That's Joseph Opoku-Gakpo doing some work at the Cornell University, sharing the Ghanaian story of agriculture and issues to do with climate change and biotechnology. There's a lot that we will get from that corner later on here on this news channel. Now, the debate about the potential cure for HIV/AIDS continues, and it's not just continuing, but unabated, as the programs manager for the National AIDS STI Control Program has added his voice to the controversial subject. Dr. Stephen Asiado is urging Ghanaians to be cautious about people claiming to have a cure for the disease. Dr. Ado was speaking on the sidelines of the Ghana AIDS Commission's 12th Partnership and Business Forum in Accra on the theme Sustainable Partnership and Resource Mobilization Towards Achieving 90-90-90.
What data is concerned and the evidence, there is no cure yet. We've heard herbalists and other groups of people, recent ones in the media, claiming cure, but they themselves will admit that before a drug is declared as even a drug for a particular disease, it has to go through certain processes. We need to, first of all, apart from the test tube, in vitro test, check whether it can even be accepted by even animals first. Then after that, you take it to human beings. And even that there are different steps of the clinical trials. In coming out with a medication, you look at apart from efficacy, which is its effectiveness, you are looking at its side effects, possible potential harm to the individual. Let me tell you now, if I pick Parazone, any antiseptic, and I put it in a tube with HIV or the virus, a few hours when I check, the virus will die. But I cannot extrapolate, therefore, that it is a cure for HIV. Therefore, I should give Parazone to individuals. That's why you go through a certain process. And before even it's utilized in a country, it has to be certified by the FDA. The recent claims, we have checked with the FDA, they have not certified or registered any medication to that effect. Actually, we as a country have given opportunity to even herbalists. There's a desk, Center for Research in Plant Medicine, the Ministry of Health, to subject all potential medications, herbal or whatever source, to a certain process so that at the end of the day, we can move it through and say it's a cure. So we are more anxious for a cure than every other person. So even globally in international conferences, there's nothing like that. Okay. And I want to establish that people make claims that South Africa and all that. If it was the case, they wouldn't even come here. The South Africans will capture it, and everybody is in a hurry to be a hero. All right, so
Doc,
there's no cure. Until you hear from the National AIDS Control Program, from the Ghana Health Service, the Ministry of Health, please, or the Commission, that there is a cure.
Successful, I must say, trial in South Africa, and I have interactions with those two people. First of all, I want to find out why wasn't it the case that we created a congenial atmosphere or a serene atmosphere for Dr. Duncan to go ahead with the trials here in Ghana, but he had to go all the way to South Africa to carry out the trial?
Nobody will prevent anybody from undertaking a trial in Ghana. You have to meet the requirements. They are standards. You have to go through certain phases. And the ethical review boards, Noguchi and all the people will make sure that you do that, because undertaking any trial with human subject has serious risks. In fact, which is why when you even discover a medication, you are made to administer in your own country before other countries, because we don't want it to be used as a biological weapon. So this claim that it was allowed in South Africa and not here is unfounded, because if they met every criteria to move it to another level, nobody will prevent it. Once you present a protocol which is clear, which meets the requirements, you have a certain previous historical data and all that, you will be allowed. There is nothing wrong. And we don't certify people for medication and all that. There are institutions that do that. So if you want to undertake any study, FDA and all that, they will do that. They will subject you to it. It has even nothing to do with us. And we also are very careful. We are neutral. You don't promote somebody's medication and so on and so forth. That is not what we are doing. As much as possible, we want the fact. Once we get it, once it's adopted as a country medication, we will procure it. So, in fact, the last thing we will do is even trying to go and support when we don't have all the facts and all that. We don't do that. And as much as possible, some of even our medications, we always go for the generics. Are you getting me? But it should be acceptable, WHO certified, everything. Meet all the requirements.
Right, you're still watching the Pulse on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. Stop.